Hey everyone, it's Kristen Dokas, and you are listening to or watching Conversations on the Rocks, the show that is unpredictable as I am. And today you have the joy and pleasure of listening and learning from Sara Monroe. Sara is up in the northern New England area, which, as of this recording on April 9th, just got pounded with about 18 inches of snow, while some of us were in 75-degree weather, and I'm sure she's bitter about that. But anyways, Sara has experience in many fields, from fundraising and PR to digital media and even molecular biology. I'll let her maybe some other time talk to us about that. She's now working with small business development and gender equity organizations. And here we go. Cheers, Sara. Thanks for being
Kristen.
Here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Of course. Sara has an alcohol-free cocktail, which if you listened to our friend Lisa Danforth in a previous episode, who has a alcohol-free business, it's very appropriate. But oddly enough, we're all connected, so not too much of a surprise. We today are going to be talking about imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is something that, and I'm going to let Sara correct me after I say it, is an affliction that is pretty much only something that women experience. As a matter of fact, before I even came up to start recording, I was mentioning to Steve, and he said, I said, do you know what imposter syndrome is? And he's no. And I said, that's very fitting that you don't. And so I went through and I did one of my favorite analogies, which is if a man and a woman apply for a job and there's 10 requirements on there, a man will typically look at it and go, oh, I've got 3 of those. I'm good. Let me send in my resume. Whereas a woman will 9 times out of 10 want at least all 10, but maybe 9 before. Otherwise, they're going to say, I'm not qualified. Now, Steve made an interesting comment. He goes, I never really thought about it that way. He said, I guess as men, we're just told and have been raised that you miss all the shots you don't take. So what do you got to lose? And I said, I'm going to use that. I'm going to roll that into it. So we're going to talk about gender inequality. I guess it is, but imposter syndrome. And we're going to dig deep. And I think in the pre-show, we discovered we have so much to talk about. We're going to put it into 2 parts. So I'm not sure when we'll drop the second part. It might be the next week. I don't know. It's always a surprise around here. So Sara, I'm going to turn it over to you.
That's great. Yeah. This is a big topic to discuss. It really is. When you mentioned what Steve had said to you, I remember it was a few years ago, we happened to be talking about bullet journals at an event. And there happened to be a gentleman there. It was a cooking event. And he said, oh, you bullet journal. My wife is trying to bullet journal. Can you show me a few pages? And one page happened to be, I had just taken notes. I was at a networking event and I was taking notes from the speaker. And I had written, I was trying to keep myself occupied while I was doing it. I'd written in big letters, you are enough. And he looked at it and he said, you are enough. Do you really need to write that down? Why is that something that a speaker would say? And he was so far out of the realm of even considering that someone may need to remind themselves at a time where they may be feeling nervous or anxious that they are enough, that there's a reason why they're in that room, because it never ever occurred to him. And I have to say that has been something that has come up in my career over and over again, just with a lot of women. And I would also argue with a lot of folks who have been underrepresented when it comes to corporate America, when it comes to policy making, decision making, leadership teams. There's a lot of people who are underrepresented. It's not just white women.
You made an interesting, or you corrected me and are brought to my attention something I wasn't aware of, and that was that you made the comment that women of color, it's really a white woman pandemic, a white woman disease, imposter syndrome. Can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah,
sure. In preparing for this show, I thought, I'm feeling like I have imposter syndrome about talking about imposter syndrome. even though this is something we experience. So I may have taken a deeper dive than needed into all of this. But it was interesting. I was reading an article from last year in the New Yorker written by Leslie Jameson. So if people want to look, I'll give you the link,
we'll put it in the show notes.
We can put it in the show notes. But it referenced some research from the 1970s. And in that research by Pauline Clancy, want to give credit where credit's due,
of
right?
Course,
this is
that's
part
right.
of the imposter syndrome fighting, imposter syndrome warriors, maybe we can call ourselves that when it comes to people of color and perhaps other marginalized groups too, it's not that they don't feel like they deserve a seat at the table. It's that they're seeing that the table is rotten to begin with and needs to be replaced. And I think that's the place where people who may have more privileged backgrounds are starting to come to realize is that when we really think about the biases that infiltrate everything that we do, the privilege that comes in, if we really want higher quality work products, higher quality leadership, higher quality policy, higher quality workplaces, and engender a sense of belonging and inclusion, you need to destroy the old tables. And with that will come crashing down imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome was actually originally, here's the historical roots of it, was called imposter phenomenon, where social science researchers were actually seeing that these high achieving people, typically women, were having these crises of self-confidence, and over time it became called imposter syndrome. And I would say probably accelerated in the last 10 years with the rise of all of the knowledge that anybody can put their fingertips on. We all feel like maybe we're faking it sometimes. If you aren't pale and male and wrote a book, where do you feel that you have the qualifications for speaking up about something?
And
right?
I think that's a really good point. And one of the things that we want to share a couple of personal experiences is I've been a digital marketer for over 15 years. And back in the day, then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, it became, what was the old saying? Anybody can hang their shingle by the door, right? And now, and I agree with you, and I'm putting the things together with, in the past 10 years, the amount of information that has become available. So anyone truly can get and spend some time on Google, and especially now with AI, you turn around and you can go in and ask AI, give me a marketing plan, give me a social media marketing plan, give me this, give me that, and it will conjure it up. And to the point where even though I've been doing it for 15 years, all of a sudden I'm like questioning myself and my capabilities, whereas 5-7 years ago, I wouldn't even think twice about it. So I was not struggling because I've had plenty of times where I've had imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon. But just as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, so somebody could do all that research and then turn around and come up with the same thing that it took me 15 years of experience to do.
And I would ask, though, is it the same quality?
Absolutely not.
AI is still a toddler. It has not reached any level of maturity, and it's regenerating.
Absolutely.
In some cases, it's regenerating flawed information to begin with. And then people are taking that and then creating these short form contents and talking as if they're experts. They just have a better stage presence than maybe even people who wrote the original pieces on this, and they are taking it as their own, or as if they've just discovered, like they're Magellan, they've just discovered that the earth is round.
And
right?
I'm not sure what the opposite of imposter syndrome is, but here's the thing that a lot of us know is I don't have to know everything. I just need to know more than you.
Yep.
So you have somebody, and especially with very detailed professions, your very technical professions, if you're bringing me in because I'm the subject matter expert, I already know you don't know anything, right? It's not like you're going to do the work. Where it truly comes in is if we're going toe to toe with somebody that's a peer in our industry, right? So it's definitely an interesting phenomenon. I think it is better to call it imposter phenomenon and not imposter syndrome.
Right. And what contributes to it is the culture that you're stepping into, too, either as an expert or a team member. I've worked on one team where if a woman misspoke, it just astounds me that this has happened in the last 4 years. If a woman on the team misspeaks, just like I just did, the men would jump all over it and tease you about it. If a man misspeaks, it's don't interrupt me. It's that blatantly toxic culture around that. And it's astounding that it keeps going. But I have to say, I love Gen Z.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome, I think, has really just exploded with Gen X and millennials, men and women, I would say, and non-binary folks, gender expansive folks. I think it's exploded in the last 20 years with our generations. But Gen Z just cuts right to it and says what we've been thinking all along, and I just love them for it.
And when you're talking about that, are you talking about imposter syndrome, or are you talking about the inequality?
Inequality you can take back to the dawn of the patriarchy,
Absolutely.
right? When humanity used to be matriarchal systems. And you and I live in the United States, even when the early colonists in the United States, remember the witch hunts? That part of that was silencing women. It was women were getting together and sharing some of the natural medicinal practices that they had learned from some of the indigenous people, but they were also talking about the men, and that was forbidden, that you cannot have these cults of women getting together. That's blasphemy. And it's followed women through history. Even I love you and I both before this show, we watched Reshma Saujani, the founder of Girls Who Code, gave a commencement speech last year, and I recommend everybody watch that.
I'll drop a link.
Yeah, she talked about when bicycles were first coming to prevalence in Europe and North America, the freedom that it gave everybody who was physically fit enough to ride a bicycle. And suddenly, though, when you ride a bicycle, your face gets flushed, and they thought that there is an epidemic of ill health among women because their faces were getting flushed. Really, when you roll it back to the systems in place, when women could ride a bicycle and didn't depend on the men in her life for transport, she could go out and meet with other women and do things like talk about women's rights to vote, right? These awful things that were happening with women having the freedom to make their world bigger. And the reason how they squashed it was to say it's bad for women's health. There was a time where in the early 20th century, women shouldn't go to college because it's bad for their health. It's stressful. Women can't endure the physicality or the mental strain of going to college. And that's why women shouldn't go to college, right?
Yeah. We can have an entire conversation on gender
I know,
inequality.
and we can extend this. We can extend this to racial inequality. I mean, it goes. It's really when we talk about the systems, we feel like we don't fit in. Imposter syndrome at its core is we don't feel like we fit in or that we know enough, whereas we are in a system where we don't fit in.
So let's talk about that, and we'll have another conversation another day about the gender inequality, because that is its own, and they do intertwine. But what I was as you were talking about Gen Z, because obviously I've got 3 kids that are Gen Z, I have to disagree with you there, because I've watched each of my girls experience imposter syndrome. And so it's been, luckily for me, I knew what it was. I was able to play Dr. Docus and diagnose. I saw the symptoms, and I was able to diagnose the malady. But especially like with my oldest, when she went for her first like real big girl job. Yeah. And she, in some ways, she had a legitimate reason to have imposter syndrome, But let's stop calling it that. It was a new job, a new career for which she had plenty of functioning ability to do it. She went from basically bartending and events management into catering sales manager. So dealing with the business side of it, right? Whereas before she was dealing with the make sure that table set up and this and that. So the physical side of it, right? But in her head, she's, I've never done this before. I'm like, are you kidding me? You've been doing this for the past 5 years. It just looks different. It was just having to make her stop and think, yeah, you haven't done this job. However, let's take a look at all the things you've done in your previous jobs that are going to benefit you in a desk job. I think it's just, for all of us, it's just reframing it. What are some ideas and things that you can think of? What are some, if somebody, or hopefully lots of people are listening, but what are some ways that as humans, but also as professional leaders, that we can either get rid of it or help alleviate it?
I think one of the first steps is to recognize that everybody has a first day. Everybody at one point is new to what they are doing. Whether you inherit a business, you start a business, you're going into a well-established business. Everybody has a first day, and recognizing that there needs to be some structural supports to help them through that. For instance, your daughter, right? And on the personal side, remembering you were hired for a position because of your experience and because of what you can do. And you just may not know where things are at the start, but you were there for a reason, and they picked you to be there. And so letting yourself shine, also having people around you that will, what's the saying, that will light your candle, not snuff it out, right?
Yes.
Like that workplace that I said, if I misspoke, I clearly remember it. I had said 8 instead of 10, and boy, did they jump down my throat. Instead of paying attention to what, and I corrected myself immediately when I said 8, I knew I meant 10, but instead of focusing on the next sentence, they just couldn't let go of that. So that building a culture that is more inclusive, that recognizes that people aren't going to feel like they fit in, and what are the practices and the habits that we've had for so long that are really hard to break, that are in some ways the implicit bias that we carry about younger people, or people from different backgrounds, or people from different countries, or people who have an accent, right? There is a lot of bias that we carry, and the first step to that is to recognize what your bias is and to stop that.
As you were talking, it occurred to me that there are things that we as individuals personally can do. And I think one of the biggest things that women, and I'm just going to say women, can do is check your tribe. You need to surround yourself by other women that are cheering you on. And I think when you have a solid tribe around you that's cheering you on, that says, you got this, you go girl, why you're the, what, if you have those cheerleaders,
right?
Instead of, and you know, I'm going to go back to my oldest. She, for a long time, had the little Debs, the little debutantes around that all they did was just tear each other up. And I'm like, what in Sam's carnation is going on? I'm like, we don't do that. We do not talk about our sisters that way. We do not do it. There are enough people out there that aren't female that are doing that we don't need. If your sisterhood, your sister tribe of sisters, whatever, sorority, whatever you want to call them,
squad. I like to say squad. Yeah,
is not lifting you up. You need a new squad. I think a lot of that comes from that I can't do this is because, you know why? Somewhere along the way, somebody told you that you couldn't. I don't think any of us intrinsically just wake up and go, oh, I can't do this. Somewhere along the way, we or you or they have been told, you're not good enough to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And have you seen the Dove commercials that came out around the time of the NCAA basketball tournaments?
Yes.
Where that brings to light, it's really brought the visuals to young women in athletics.
About how they, usually, is it, by age 9 they've aged out?
I think it's usually like middle school. It's right around puberty, right when body image things start to come up. It's the same with young women in math and science too. I've seen it, I felt it myself, is that you have to be perfect. Right? And I'm going to go back to Reshma Saujani because she wrote a book called Brave Not Perfect, and where she talks about how we raise boys to be brave, to take risks, and we raise girls to be perfect. You cannot send out an email with a typo in it. So we would spend 3 hours finding the last itty bitty typo and any kind of misplaced comma.
And does this sound right? And should I word my sentences differently?
Exactly. Yeah. And here's the thing. There's always going to be a typo. Even the most perfect person, there will always be a typo. If something is long enough, there's always going to be a typo. So just get over it. No one else is spending that kind of time.
And yes, I know there are 3 different ways to spell there, but if that all you took from my correspondence was the fact that didn't catch then we've got bigger issues.
Or autocorrect did. Have you been seeing this with your predictive text? I was writing a Word document today, and it was catching on to what I was writing about, and it was just filling in words for me. It's like, yep, that's what I want to write. Just tab over and accept that.
Brave over perfect. Brave, not perfect. That kind of goes back to what Steve said when he and I were talking about it, which is that that guys just go, you shoot your shot, right? What's the worst that can happen? And I think that's another dialogue that women need to, oh my God, what happens if they say no? Okay.
Right.
What if they don't? Then you've got an answer.
Fail?
Okay. Yeah. But if you don't try it, guess what? You're definitely going to fail.
Exactly.
And it's just, these are the kind of lessons that we need to, especially as the adult females, need to be coaching the younger ones. But I agree with you. I don't see it as much with Gen Z as I've had a few interns and employees that are in that Gen Z, and I don't see it nearly as much with them as I saw it with us. And I was aged out. Actually, I wasn't aged out of millennials. I was just parenting, heavy duty parenting during the millennial time. But I think there was a lot more second guessing. There was still a lot of second guessing going on with the millennials with that. Right. But Gen Z, I think they're more like, all right, so what happens if I don't make it? I don't make it. Big deal. It's the old, you've survived 100% of the worst days of your life so far.
And I think that's where a science background has really helped me, and a professional science background, not just classroom science, but actually professional science, where things fail. Things fail spectacularly sometimes. Hopefully you don't have an explosion, which I have had once. But things break, things don't work. I had a boss say, why isn't this suddenly not working? And I said, I don't know. It was raining today. There's no conceivable reason why this didn't work. So let's retest it, try it again, and then let's see if our hypothesis is wrong in the end.
And something going along with that, something that you combining this with the 10 years, with the whole everything over the past 10 years. The other thing too is any of us, whatever we're doing in our work or personal life, there are so many extenuating circumstances that we don't control that, and just as you were saying that, I had a client that we were setting something up and something on the other side, not hers or not mine, but on the technical side of it went belly up. And she was pretty upset with me, and I'm like, I can't control that. Like, I set everything up. I do the things when I'm going through and I'm A/B testing everything is fine. Once it's done, if something happens to the software company ABC, there's nothing I can do about that. That's not a me thing. That's a them thing. And but it's so easy for everybody just to want to look and point and go, no, you touched it last. I'm like, no, actually, I did.
And I think that is an artifact of being consultants too. We're paying you so much an hour. This should be perfect. Everything has an imperfect system. Internets go down, global pandemics, people get sick, childcare falls through, People have to take care of their mental health too. I see us being much more humane now. If someone has lost childcare or they're sick, it's okay. We need to recalibrate the deadline, figure out how to get this done. Before 2020, oh, you have the flu? Could you, if you're sitting up right now, could you at least proofread this email?
But the instance that I just spoke of,
yeah,
it definitely made me question myself.
100%.
I went through before I came back with a response to my client, and I went through to all the checks and balances, and I'm like, check. But it made me go, did I do something wrong? Did I miss a step?
Wrong?
And I don't get imposter phenomenon very often. So it's just funny how easy it is to slip into that. Whereas I can imagine that somebody in the other sex would have been like, I don't know.
Yeah, I have dug into someone saying the email has to be rescinded that you sent to 5,000 people because so-and-so can't. People are calling saying that there's a mistake and that this isn't working. And so my favorite line back to that, how many people?
Right.
And as a consultant, I got to say, when was it? It was when Sheryl Sandberg, it was before she wrote Lean In. She had talked about how corporations and businesses need to treat contract people better, that we're wearing them out. It goes way back to whenever that was. What, early 2000s, I think she wrote that book?
I think it was more like around 2010-ish.
2010-ish?
Yeah. I don't think it was quite
that
Y2K.
far. Yeah, but she was saying that we are developing a gig economy and that consultants and freelancers are going to be used more, and we need to treat them better. That no, it is a system problem. And how many of us now write into our client contracts that certain things are beyond our control?
I learned that lesson several years ago. It is not my fault if Meta goes down. I'm sorry if Facebook is down. Yes, it's a trending hashtag on Twitter or X, but it's not I can do nothing about it.
And I defend a designer who comes back and says, you made another change, you have to approve this proof. I'm the same with our printers. I've had to eat a printing bill with a client because there was a typo in it. It was like a significant piece that needed to be fixed. We had to rip a page out of a program and put it back in for an event. We had the time to do it. But I hadn't written in my contract, final proof approval means final proof approval. I am not the final proof approval. So I learned that lesson pretty hard too. So
the ones that take money out of our pocketbook are always the ones that we go, okay, next rendition, lawyer up and go, okay. Oh, my light just went off and now it's dark. I'm like looking, if y'all can't see me, I'm like looking all Rudy.
I know. You talked about the 18 inches of snow. The benefit that we had was 50 degrees over the weekend and a total eclipse. We were in the path of totality. So gotta say,
nice.
The snow last week was okay. The fluky internet, when we talk about things going wrong, I have to say, I can do these live shows as long as the internet is stable. And during those snowstorms, internet was not stable. So it's just, yes, those emails were all in my outbox. None of them went because internet went out.
Oh, and did you witness a rapture? I'm sorry.
And I were joking. How many raptures have we survived at this point, right?
I was talking about this to my trainer today. I was like, I remember, 2017, we were totality here. I don't remember anybody talking about a rapture. I'm like, what is going on? This world is... I'm starting to feel old because I'm starting to say, what is wrong with this world?
I know. We look at it this way. We survived Y2K. Yeah. We survived... Wasn't there a rapture in like 2006, 2008? We survived the crashes of those times.
Right.
We're Gen X, so we've survived how many recessions?
Oh, yeah.
Honestly. Yeah.
That's why we're the FAFO generation. Okay, we are going to wrap this up a little bit, and then we are going to... Sarah's going to come back, and we're going to go into more of a, instead of just this was imposter syndrome 101, right? Mm-hmm. But what I want us to talk about when we get together again is a little bit more about what businesses and people that aren't impacted. Let me say it that way. People that are not impacted by imposter syndrome, what can we do? How can we support? How can we get rid of it? How can we support these women? And I also want to talk a little bit then too about just continuing to upend this system that no longer serves any of us well. Even the ones that it supposedly serves, I don't think it serves them very well because they're having to live a little bit of this life. In closing, what would you like? Any closing comments before we sign off on this?
Closing comments. I would say I'll take a page from Brave Not Perfect and to say that everybody deserves the opportunity to take a risk and to embrace some imperfections. And that is part of life, right? And I can say that from a privileged position and also recognize that there are inequities that I face too, and that it's okay to stand in your own space. As our friend Lisa says, stand in your brilliance and lift each other up.
And that, my friends, is something you will hear me talk about all the time. Going back to what I said earlier, is make sure you've got a good squad around you that surrounds you. And if you don't, find a new squad because they're not for you. And when you do need them, they're not going to be there, at least not to help you. They'll be there to watch you fall, but that's about it. So till next time, my friends, thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you on the flip side. As the saying goes, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And that's a wrap for this week's episode. A big thanks to my guests for sharing their story and to you for listening. Don't forget to share the show with your friends and spread the words. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, the link is in the show notes. Till next time, cheers.